All right, hey everybody, for part 3 this week. Hopefully we finally squash this bug today. So without any farther ado, let's get into the code. Yesterday we were kind of messing around with this, and let's go back to the failing test. So we have this, we have kind of this conundrum, I guess you could say, or this issue where we've got this working correctly when we set up our data up top, meaning that it's now using a carbon date for any kind of date column that you have. But what we found was that we're kind of just stuffing things in request data, and then a lot of the other quote-unquote statements are using that later in the test. And I think that's going to create some issues, or at least be more complex than it needs to be. So for example, we're sending it correctly here in this request data because we're chaining on this toDate string or toDate time string. I think that's the right move. But what's a little bit questionable is when we actually use that same request data again for the date query, or down lower when we're doing an assertion. So part of me feels like the simplest thing to do would be to introduce an additional bit of data that kind of says, variables or something, and these other things begin to use that. I think that's probably the way to go, instead of kind of trying to figure out, okay, what context am I in? Okay, I'm in this context, chain on the other stuff. And just quickly, let me show you what I mean by that. I was kind of looking around in this for each statement. We go through all these statements, and I think at the very, very bottom of every possible statement, this needs some refactoring, to be honest, coming back to this. But anyway, down here, after we loop over all the statements, we build the call, meaning the HTTP bit. So this portion, this is where we build that. And I thought, kind of at the end of the stream yesterday, what would make sense is to come down here and say, okay, when you loop over request data, then chain on the toDate, string right there. That would be the easiest thing to do. We don't change any of the variables, we put it here. The problem, though, is that at this point in time, we don't really know. We don't really know what request data is anymore. Way back up in the stuff that we were adding, 200 lines above up here, we can kind of search for these green. Up here we have information about the column, meaning the model column. So we know if it's a date or whatever, but way down there where we were, we don't have that information. So I think, again, while there's probably an opportunity to refactor this, I think that the simplest thing for today would probably be to just track more variable names, or at least have the query methods and everything else simply use the variable name. So let's kind of take a peek at that and see if we can get this solved in the next few minutes. So let's get in here. We have this carbon parse. Again, all that's fine. We're setting up the data. I think that part is good. We're going to need this no matter what. What we don't want to do, I think, is where we do this toDate string kind of stuff for, request data. So I think what I'd like to do is actually go back and get rid of this. What does this look like before? I don't want to totally kill it, but I think what we can do, let's kind of see where this gets used. So request data. So we drop in request data, of course. So we set request data, we set it here. If there's request data at the very bottom, we kind of loop over it. Here's where we use it for the query. So the query only loops over request data. That's for a save operation. Part of me is thinking we need like model columns, right? We need like this model columns variable. Request data is fine, probably leave that alone, but maybe don't use it for these other assertions, because what we're really after here is the columns. So let's just do that real quick. Let's go back to request data. Let's just introduce a model columns, and let's make sure we're not using that anywhere. We're not, okay. So down here where we're doing request data, variable name, request data, what's in data? I think data is probably just the name of the thing. Ooh, maybe we don't need this side of it. Does variable name change based on data? Probably. All right, let's not overthink it. Let's just do model columns is equal to variable name. It's kind of equal to the same thing, which feels a little weird, but again, it can change in this lower line. So I think we just leave that alone for now. So model columns, guess do the same thing, data. We'll see how that comes out the other side. Here's the variable name. Here's the request data. So are these two different if statements? Yeah, they are. Okay, so we'll need to set this down here as well. Set up data faker. Where does this come from? Again, this nested code is killing me. Local model columns, we loop over each column. Variable name is that. Variable name doesn't change. So I think here we probably want to set that as well. And then what I want to do is let's just look at this query statement that we had. Wherever that was, let's just search for it. Query, there we go. So right here, when we get into save, let's just var dump request data versus model columns. And what I would expect is hopefully model columns is just the same stuff, but just the variable name. And if it is, then we can swap this out, I think. So let's quit out of that. Let's do more again. Okay, so this one is published at, date, published at, okay. And this one is born at, expires at, published at. So the way we're storing that looks, first of all, it doesn't have all the stuff that we want, so that's kind of not good. And then second of all, that date is not what we expect. So let's go back to request data. Let's make sure we got this all in the right spot. Okay, so we're adding model columns data here. We're doing it the same as request data. So that one's probably not the issue. I think the issue is probably this one doesn't need to use data. It needs to use local column name. Let's see if that helps us out. There we go, much better. Okay, so again, copy paste issue from yesterday, same thing, but this looks a little bit better. This kind of gets us back to that. Here's a mapping of the model columns and the variable that we use to set them up with faker data. All right, so let's go back to where we're using this in the var dump, and let's just see if we can simply swap this out. So let's say model columns, and model columns is, this really is column name and variable. Column variable. I think we probably use this in a lot of places, so maybe I don't want to use that. We could say name, I guess, probably. Seems innocuous enough, right? Name. We are using this in other places, but I think it's going to be okay. All right, let's run the, oh, got an issue. Undefined variable var. What did I break? Oh, variable. Thank you for your completion. All right, let's run that again. Okay, so no var dumps. Now we should, if we go down to save, we should, okay, yeah, we're getting a bit of a problem here. That's why I gotta be real careful with those names. But the request data is good. We're back to born at here. So this is on the right track. Other than the fact that we can't, what is this? I feel like, oh, that was from yesterday. Okay, let's change this to column name. Do I use this anywhere else? No, okay, thank you. Do we use this anywhere else? We use that like in a million other places. Okay, let's just go back to key and datum. This is another issue, again, relating to the fact that I have like hundreds of lines of code in this method and everything's named the same. This is not easy to maintain code. All right, let's go down, back to save. We have save stores. We're creating Carbon. We're formatting it across the wire. Good. And then we're going back to the original way that we checked that. Okay, let's look at update redirects. Here's our final issue here. We're still using request data in this assert equals. Now we need to use those column names. So let's find the other places where we use request data. Here it is. So instead of request data, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to change this out to model columns, and that might just work. I'm going to take off this more because I'm optimistic. Nope. All right. Let's see what we missed. We have it output born at. Oh, it's outputting date. That's strange. Oh no, date's good. Date's good. Sorry. What's wrong with this? This looks pretty good actually. What's the problem here? Probably a simple little, let's just copy this and we'll paste it into our fixture so we can kind of see what's going on. Don't scroll so fast. So close. There we go. All right, let's copy that. And to make sure, let's just add everything for now. We'll run Pint here in a second. Let's just add everything for now and go to that fixture. What do we call it? Date formats. Let's just paste, save, and let's do a get add -p to see where we're wrong. Okay, so our expected original, oh, it was using format. We never updated it to do. Is that it? So let's just say no. And what's wrong here? Oh, again, our request data in our test case was, I think we just kind of stubbed that out. This is actually the way it should be. Let's just double check this. All right, so we bring in Illuminate support Carbon. It seems to be alphabetical ordered, so that's good. We do Carbon parse. This is a date, so just date string. These are date times, so date time string, good. We didn't change them here in the query format. That's fine with that test, that looks good. And then here we're Carbon parsing them again to get a Carbon object, passing them across the wire in the correct format, and then we're asserting them. Eloquent's going to do its thing, it's going to format them, the two objects should compare correctly. However, timestamp, because it is cast as an integer, we need to compare it as a timestamp. That was the only nuance there, so this is correct. Destroy doesn't do anything with faker data, so that's all fine. So now, maybe we pass. That was a lot. Let's go look at var dump. Do I have any more? No, I have echoes. There we go. Let's get rid of this echo. Get rid of that noise. Let's look at this one more time. Let's run Pint. Might be a lot of files. Let's give that a second. Okay, so I think what's left here is to do the same thing for pest, which I'm not going to even dare try to do in a stream. I think what I'd rather do, let's make this PR so we can see after the three the three little sprint sessions of working on this, probably an hour of working on this. Let's see what our final changes were in like a cleaner diff on GitHub. So that's all good. Let's do a git add dot git commit dash m. Handle, the echo is still there. Oh, thank you. Let's check that out for a second real quick. Or well, let's push this up, let the test run, and while we're waiting on GitHub Actions, I'll look into the echo. Okay, so handle dates as carbon objects. Git push origin head. All right, and let's set up the PR here. So that's going to go into master. Good. We'll create pull request. Do I still have an echo stub in there? No, I can't have an echo stub. Where are you? Echo stub. Do you? All right, let's go back. Let's check my audio. It should be coming through. I thought I killed that. It's coming through on the right. That's strange. It's coming through on my boom mic. I think my boom mic, you probably heard some loud tapping there. Sorry about that. Let's swap it to my AirPods. So now, I don't know. Tell me how that sounds. I'll talk through the AirPods for a few minutes here. I wonder if the gain on that is a bit crazy though. Anyway, let me know which one you feel sounds better. Again, the gain on the AirPods might be a bit much. Okay, let's take a look at this. All right, so let's refresh this. It should be running now. We'll see if they pass. The lint passes, that's good. Let's look through this real quick. Okay, so we introduced model columns, and then when we are looping over the model columns, oh, echo and code. Wonderful. Well, either way, let me know if the AirPods are more clear. Previous auto setup. Okay, cool. I like the boom mic better. I worry these could move with my, head or whatever. Okay, so let's review the changes here. We have model columns, and then we have, as we're looping over the model columns, if they're a date, we want to make sure to set up that faker data accordingly, meaning use carbon. All right. Otherwise, and then we're going to use model columns with just the variable name. Now this doesn't look much different, but it matters, I think, here in a second. All right, so when we come back down, there's an alternate path where the model data is not available. Honestly, I kind of need to better understand why these two paths exist. Again, that's all part of maybe a refactor someday where these are in like some aptly named methods. My assumption here is that one is a traced model and one is the current model, meaning the one that's in your draft file. That's probably what this was, but I don't remember because, I wrote this code like 3 years ago. So that's why you need nice readable code if you're going to have something that maintains it, or crazy, huge, 3-line Laravel comments. Either or. Both would be the best, I suppose. Anyway, let's see here. We have more here, and then again, yet another loop where if it's a date, we kind of put it out and ultimately we save it. So again, it looks odd to me. What's also interesting is that I only have an import here, but I don't actually do an import in this segment. So I feel like that should probably get solved. It's not showing up in the test, but clearly there are scenarios where that bit of data was in one loop versus the other. Like we were seeing published at, but we weren't seeing the other dates. So even in the same test, or generation, you can see where we get in these different loops. So this import statement probably needs to be thrown up there. But anyway, the bulk of the code is when we're looping over a model, if its column is a date, we need to do the appropriate action. That's basically what these multi-line changes are. And then instead of using the request data, because now it can be formatted for Carbon or whatever, we're just going to use these model columns in any kind of model operation, meaning a save operation or an update operation. So that's all we really did. Again, I think this import for Carbon could probably be put somewhere else or something. We could figure that out. But it's really just streamlined. The rest of the code is this new date method. So that's a nice little helper method. We added a timestamp, or sorry, a date, a type hint, a return type hint on column just for some better completion. And then everything else was our tests. So really it was just this 40-line change. But the problem, as we saw, was that this method is hundreds of lines long, 300 lines long plus. It was a nightmare to go through. Yeah, so if we learned anything, it's probably that we need to refactor this huge, build test case method. How long is this thing? So 430 lines, 37 lines. So yeah, lots there. Anyway, let's fix that import real fast. Whoops, Carbon. We need to make sure to add this in both scenarios. So not just this is date, but in the other location as well. So here we would want to add it also, right? Let's make sure I got that right. So we're going to put it, we're going to add it. Let's add it on the first one just for clarity. I don't know when those would ever be different, but just to be symmetric. Okay. And then down here when we're adding it there. Okay, so those are the three spots. We tested here when we're doing the date, and then in Carbon parse. I don't know if that covers everything, to be honest, but it's pretty cheap right where we have it there. This is in some kind of else though. I'm just trying to think of the appropriate place to add this. This else stops here, so to avoid a scenario where we get into this factory, it probably should be down here in setup data is my guess. And no, that's not right. If we're using Carbon, it should be where Carbon is. So that's what we're gonna do this based on. If we're outputting Carbon, then that's where it needs to be, and that's where it is. Okay, so good. We're outputting Carbon, make sure to add the import. We're outputting Carbon, we make sure to add the import. Nowhere else in here is Carbon : referenced. Let's go back, let's run pint just to make sure. Git add dot, git commit dash, or well, git append. Let's just force, because it's a new branch, it's my branch. All right, and let's go back. Were the tests passing? Oh, well, we just force pushed, but it seems as though the tests were not previously passing. Yeah, handles Carbon objects. So I'm going to stop the stream here. What I'm going to do is get these tests passing and then make sure this works for pest as well. So I'll get in here, see why these tests weren't passing. Looks something pretty high up, to be honest. So figure that out next. Anyway, thank you all for joining me on my three-part journey this week to squash this bug. Maybe you like the shorter streams. Let me know in the chat. Let me know on Twitter. I think I'll probably do them in the future, but maybe make sure they're a bit more focused so we actually can get through something from start to finish in 20 or 30 minutes. So thanks again. See you all next time.